I dropped off exploding toner bottles and pictures of myself stabbing copy machines in the middle of the woods. And just the craziest, most unhinged concepts you could possibly think of.
Set the
Well, no,
context here.
it came from a lady telling me to F off at her office. Never come back here.
So I used lipstick and I wrote the guy a note, like just unhinged as hell. I bought these from him, but he stood me up and I had to eat them.
The empty donut box.
I went back inside and literally the dude called me on my cell phone and said, "Hey, are you still around?" If there's not an inkling of risk in your blood and there's not a desire to create discomfort for yourself, I can't help you.
All right, my friends, welcome back to another episode of Marketing Without Rules, the show where we inspire business owners by bringing on guests who exemplify the hunter mindset. They make moves, they color outside the lines, and they have found creative ways to channel the attention of their community into currency. This show is sponsored by Blue Crocus Solutions, a web design and SEO agency focused on helping home service companies. I am your host, Lewis Vandervalk, and today I have the pleasure of chatting with Dale Dupree, who just happens to perfectly embody the Marketing Without Rules philosophy. He's a bit of a rebel, as we'll get into as we go, but he is a sales renegade who proves every day that authenticity outperforms tactics and that the boldest strategy is being unmistakably human. We're all humans, selling and working with humans. Dale, welcome to the show.
Yeah, what's up? Thanks for having me on.
Excited to have you on here. So I'll give listeners a bit of a backstory here. So if you're not following Dale on LinkedIn, you should be. I think that's where you're the most active. Is that correct?
As of right now, yes.
Okay, cool. So he's pretty active on LinkedIn. He's got some pretty unhinged comments in other people's posts. So if you start following him, you'll see his comments rocking off there. But he also posts pretty consistently as well. And I connected with him. I don't remember why initially I did. I think I probably saw a suggested comment on a post, then I started following you, and then started seeing what you're about. And I was like, this is exactly what we talk about here on the Marketing Without Rules podcast. And so Dale's perspective and his approach to sales is quite different than most. And Dale, I think what we'll get started with is just maybe you could tell people a little bit of a backstory about what that perspective might be and why.
Yeah, so I have a non-traditional story, if you will, especially in the B2B space. I actually got my sea legs selling copy machines. Prior to that, my profession, if you will, my career was in music. So I toured in a heavy metal band that I sang in. I started around 16-ish years old, getting serious about it. And by the time I was 17, we were off to the races. So I skipped college and played in a band. And somewhere around 21, 22 years old, I decided to come back and start a career in sales. I took a full-time commission only gig, and it was with my father selling copy machines. So yeah, I think my first year I made $27,000, and so I contemplated going back into music. But I also there were unforeseen circumstances on the music side of things that had started to bubble up and create problems, and ultimately shift the narrative and my path consequently. So I decided to stick it out one more year selling copy machines. I actually did fairly decent in year 2, and really found my voice, if you will. And in the process of that, I developed a personal brand called the Copier Warrior inside of the organization that I represented. And I went ham, as the kids would say. In my generation, at least, the kids would say. And by going ham, I did everything that the opposite of what you have probably been told is normal in the working world, especially from a sales perspective. So I did not traditionally cold call people like everybody else. I dropped off exploding toner bottles and pictures of myself stabbing copy machines in the middle of the woods. And just the craziest, most unhinged concepts you could possibly think of. And the purpose for that was, one, to let people know that I didn't just talk a big game, that I showed up differently as well too. In our industries, in the copier space, there was a
It
lot
takes some
of
commitment to take a copier out to the woods and stab it.
well, it takes some extra dollars, that's for sure, because
Yeah.
those things aren't cheap. But in our industry, there was a lot of just getting by concepts, so doing hundreds of thousands of dials a month, going to networking events just to pass out cards, just the motions, if you will, that people were always in. Like, I believe that at that state of in time, that sales was focused on, as long as you showed up, you'd win. If you showed up and you were the most consistent person to show up, you would win. And I mean, I agree with that theory to an extent, and the results speak for themselves for some people. So there are probably some listening that are just like, yeah, I don't know how I did it. Honestly, I just showed up. And I think that's great. But if there's 27 other people in your territory showing up, then suddenly
A lot of noise.
it's like it's a guessing game of who's going to become successful for the people that are, your future clients and customers. So I did it, from the perspective again of like showing people that I was willing to go the extra mile. And then also, in the process of going the extra mile, I really differentiated myself, as opposed to lining up with the other 27 sales reps that were cold calling you. I was very distinct in nature. And because of that, I got a lot of instant gratification, if you will, where people would meet with me on the spot. They would call me in the parking lot and tell me to come back in. It was a lot of consistency just in results that were very non-traditional through my very non-traditional sales approach. So that's a little bit of background on where I come from, how I got started, and that spawned and morphed my obsessions from just the idea of selling copiers to like teaching everybody and their mom how to sell the same way that I was selling. And so that's what I did. I jumped ship in the copier space, and I started teaching over at the Sales Rebellion, the company that I founded back in 2019, and I've been doing it ever since.
That's killer. That's killer. We've got Aaron Wilson tuning in here locally. He says, love the hat. I have that shirt. Such a great brand. Love it. Love it. Thanks for tuning in, Aaron. What a cool story. So the exploding toner bottles I wasn't aware of, but we're going to get into some of the other stuff around the Sales Rebellion. How does the exploding toner bottle work? I
did crazy stuff. But you ever see like a spilled cup of coffee, but it's not real? It's a prop.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of like mimicked those same concepts, in if you will. And I did it in a lot of different ways. I mean, I would take people paper jams that were like legitimately pulled out of a coffee machine and then used as marketing, which is actually what kind of spawned the Crumpled letter.
I was going to say
part of what spawned the Crumpled letter, and then my reign of terror with that thing began, which I still am on a rampage with. For
I don't think it'll get old anytime soon,
years.
to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing it for 15 years. It was 2010 when I started. 2010, end of 2010. So, the exploding toner bottle is just a singular concept and a vast galaxy of ideas that flow through my brain on a daily basis. So
I'd like to break down the Crumpled letter. Let's start there. It's kind of your signature move, or what, certainly how I kind of came across you. What is the Crumpled sales letter? Why should people use it? And how can they execute it? I know you have a course that people can buy. Not really a course, but you've got like templates and stuff they can buy, and it kind of walks through the whole thing. But for those listening, how can they kind of really latch onto the concept here?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I realize, just like everybody else should realize, that nobody likes a cold call. So people that make cold calls, even, they don't like doing it. They can tell you all day long that, it's their favorite thing and they love it. And most of that is just because they're probably selling some kind of course to teach you how to do it as well too. And the thing is that even if there's
harassing all those people in the LinkedIn comments too, it's funny.
Yeah, I mean, I love those people too. I think there's some of my favorite folks out there, like Jack Frimston is a big cold dialer. There's a lot of them, right? And I shout out to Jack. Him and his brother wrote an excellent book, by the way, and I highly recommend people pick it up. But it's not like I don't think these people are credible or worth anybody's time. It's that I think it's a shame that we're still sitting around on the phones dialing people cold, quite frankly. I've leaned into this pretty heavily for the last 6 years and been called, a psychopath more times than I can count. But I have a different experience and I would like other people to try and experience the same thing. So what we hear a lot of is we hear a lot of people saying, oh yeah, I send a few crumpled letters, but then I still do my 100 dials a day. And then we ask them like, well, what are your results? And they typically say, well, I don't really have much difference in results. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, of course you don't, because you're not focused on the things that you
crumpled
need to
letter,
be. You're
yeah.
still doing a lot of
So
cold calling.
let's
That's
back
fine.
up for those listening. What is the crumpled letter? It sounds like it came out of the paper jams there. Let's set
Well,
the
no,
context here.
it came from a lady telling me to F off at her office. And like legitimately this lady told me to F off, never come back here. You people annoy me. You know, she like stereotyped me to the max. And it was because I was a copier salesman. She had been called like 3 times that day by one apparently, and it just like set her off. So that was where it came from. It was like the shuddering feeling on the way to your car after being harassed in an office for walking in and asking to speak to somebody. But I got it. I understood it. I sat back and said, well, this makes sense. You know, why should she talk to me? And I'm just like everybody else. And for the most part, salespeople have done a disservice to the people that we seek to serve, because we've never said it that way. We've only said people that we want to sell shit to. Is really the idea here, right? So because salespeople have been so selfish, why should anybody accommodate any of us? To be quite frank with you, and just was sitting around with some friends that night, talking about like what was going through my head and how I was trying to and planning to break through from that stuff. And I'd showed a couple of my ideas that I had been kind of like rolling out very slowly but surely, like a business card that was just a little bit different than everybody else's, and had a place where I could write a message and, you know, had something funny on the back of it, and just like real small stuff that I had seen a little bit of results from, right, but not anything significant. And a friend of mine was like, I need to hook you up with this guy down in South Florida. He's a realtor. You need to talk with this guy. He did a big campaign in the real estate world, you know, somewhere in 2003, 2002, and he had a massive return, and his ideas remind me a lot of what you're talking about. So I connected with this dude, and he told me about how he basically sent out a direct mail to thousands of people, tens of thousands of people. He got a response rate of like less than 1%. And at the time, direct mail was getting like a 5 to 10% return at the time. And so he was just baffled by the thought that he could get less than 1% on his. So he actually went and like wrote on each one of the envelopes, "Don't throw me away again," on the front of them, and resent all the same letters from that same direct mail campaign. And so people got that same letter, but it said, "Don't throw me away again," on the front of it. And essentially it was like resurrected from the trash. And I thought, oh, dude, that's so sick. And that idea, you know, in tandem with things like I was taking people paper jams and with notes that are like, if you see enough of this at the office, maybe we should talk. And just thought through that a little bit more diligently and thought, okay, well, everybody hates sales calls, like I was just saying earlier before I got on a tangent there. And so why wouldn't I relate to that? Why wouldn't I be more human? Why wouldn't I create a familiar place there and cause a little bit of curiosity and ultimately credibility in that familiar spot? And so I started the letters off with, hey, you're probably wondering why this is crumpled up. Well, I know how much you love getting sales stuff and that it just ends up in the garbage anyway. So I pre-crumpled this one to make it easier for you to throw away. It was just a very simple message. And
it's so good. It just like tickles all the little fun marketing things.
Yeah, it's fun. From there, I turned out the pre-burnt letters. So I pre-burnt this letter for you, a coffee stain letter. I made you a coaster to put your morning cup of joe on instead of having to throw this away and add to the trash pile. It can be reused. You know, like I have a lot. There's the pre-shredded letter. There's a ton of them. And like you had said, we sell the templates at crumpledletter.com for the legendary letter set. Because I also think that just because I sent you a crumpled letter doesn't mean I'm going to get a response and you don't owe me anything. So I think sequencing and like nuancing the approach over like consistently over and over again, just like we just talked about, like showing up is one of the ingredients. And like I said, I think that's true to an extent. But if you want different results, you got to show up differently. You got to be consistent in showing up, but you got to be different in the way that you approach people and how you connect with them. It's also got to be genuine. So I tell anybody that's listening to this right now, if you're the kind of person that's like, oh, let me try that, just because it works, you shouldn't do it, because you're just doing the rest of us a disservice. If it's your personality, if it fits with you and in your box and it's genuine, then you should do it. But the one thing you should be asking yourself here when hearing this is, well, what is my crumpled letter? and then really challenging that narrative and taking some risks, trying things a little bit differently, and just thinking outside of the box to rehumanize your approach. Because just because you're professional doesn't mean you're human. Like, if anything, that's a little bit more robotic than everybody else. And like, everybody sends an email, everybody sends a text message, everybody makes a phone call, but like, who sends something experiential in the mail or drops it off, for that matter?
Do you mind if I
Do
you mind if I read the first bit of your crumpled letter here?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I actually did purchase Dale's thing. This is one that I'm working on for demolition companies, actually. But basically, the concept goes along the way. I've wrinkled it up. I think you actually wrinkle it up and then put it through the printer. I did it after.
Yeah.
But it's basically, you're probably wondering why this letter looks like it went through a blender, right? Well, the truth is, most of the sales messages crossing your path, online or offline, are unhelpful garbage. So I've pre-crumpled the letter so that you can toss it in the trash more easily. However, I'm hoping that you'll take 28 more seconds to see if I can earn a place in your heart. And then it goes on, right? So Dale's got a whole template there. And I think you also have, I just have this one, head honcho demo, because that's what I'm doing it there. But you have a thing on the outside that you can print on the envelopes that says crumpled letter inside. So it piques interest, it piques curiosity. It creates an experience for them. It creates some humor. There's some humor thrown in to the experience. And when I saw it, I was just like, man, this is so fun and such a different, fun way to do cold outreach. I hate cold calling myself. It's a drag. And for whatever reason, it's just, you might do it as a character building thing, but it's not a fun thing to do. Whereas this is like, you feel good doing it, you feel fun, and then the person receiving it on the other end is like, oh, that's interesting. That's unique. You mentioned that sometimes you've dropped them off and people have called you in the parking lot. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. That's happened more times than I can count. And it's happened with all kinds of different drops that I've done. I like the empty donut box. I mean, kind of just like everything. And so for me, like, the proof is in the pudding that, like, if you can do something so audacious that.
Oh, I think we lost audio there. We were expecting this to happen. Don't worry, guys. But while he's figuring out audio, we'll come back and we'll talk about that there. Okay, I think we're back.
There we go. Yeah, so if you can do something so audacious and so different for people that it causes them to stop in their tracks, like during their typical day. That's the thing that's the most powerful inside of this concept and theory. So really, like, what people need to really realize with the concept of getting called in the parking lot is that it's not even about the call in the parking lot. It's about like playing out what just happened with the person that you were hitting up. So think about it for a second, and let's just take through one. So I dropped off my first ever empty donut box, one of my favorite stories. I was kind of a little bit perturbed and upset with this person. So there was a little bit of emotion there, but I detached and just simply went down and was like, all right, I'm going to do something fun, but maybe it pushes the limit a little bit. But I think this person needs that because this is the second time that they've canceled an appointment on me. I've never met him in person. So again, I can understand like why it's easy for people to do things like cancel an appointment when you've never met somebody to begin with, right? But I thought, you got to at least like call me, man. Like, you got to at least like send me an email, not just like cancel me on your calendar, which is what he did the first time. And the second time I went all the way to his office, and his secretary like made me wait for 20 minutes or so. And I was just like, he's not available and he's going to have to reschedule with you. So I went to the Dunkin' Donuts around the corner. It took me about 20, 30 minutes to do this, right? But I grabbed an empty donut box. I went to my office to grab a red Sharpie. I actually ended up using lipstick. That's how the story goes. So I used lipstick, and I wrote the guy a note, like just unhinged as hell, just like, hey, I ate these for our meeting, but you stood me up. And I bought these for our meeting, but you stood me up and I had to eat them because they were going to go stale. Yeah, sorry, let's reschedule and we can share a box. And, just like literally crumbed the bottom of this thing. It was disgusting on the inside of this donut box. I went back inside, it's been like 45 minutes or so. And the lady like looks at me funny when I come in. I'm like, hey, I just brought this back for so-and-so. Could you just leave it on their desk for them? She took it. And because there was no wait, she was like, what's this? And she opened it up and she experienced it. And her feedback actually was the funniest, right? Because she said, I don't know, this is kind of crazy. He might not like this, but I'll set it on his desk. And so she did. She set it on his desk. And I'm telling you, I walked into the parking lot. It took me about 2-3 minutes to get into my car. Got into my car, started to drive off, 2-3 minutes after that. And literally the dude called me on my cell phone and said, hey, are you still around? And I said, yeah. And he said, cool, come back inside. And I
Let's
did.
go share some donuts.
So I think about not just my story I just told you from my POV, but what about his? Like, first off, that dude was in his office the whole time and he stood me up, right? So, he just like legitimately just decided to ignore the crap out of me that day. Yeah. But then I did this thing and it made him, like, to some extent feel a little bit of guilt, if you will. And also he told me when I got in, he goes, you got guts to do something like this. And I respect that, but also this is funny as hell. And come on in, And so I sat down with him for the first time and I ended up winning a massive sale with this guy that, changed the trajectory of my career. So a lot of the times, again, it's just taking that risk and doing something a little bit different than everybody else to just see what will happen. So again, I think like getting the call in the parking lot is more about the POV of the person that receives it. Like Tracy at the front desk walks into his office. What does she say to him? How does she present this thing to him? How does she help to nuance the she could just like leave it on his desk and he might not ever see it or spend 2 weeks not seeing it. So I think a lot of it has to do with like how we present, how we communicate.
Pretty hard to avoid a donut box though. Pretty hard to avoid seeing a donut box, like for her to drop that off.
Yeah, for sure. I would totally agree with that. But at the same time, like how many donut boxes go through that office, right? So here the guy might see a donut box and just be like, oh, great, somebody brought donuts, and like maybe ignore it, maybe check it out, who knows? But I know that lady went in there and was like, hey, that guy you stood up, he came back and he brought this, and I think you should see it. And because of that, he stopped what he was doing. He opened it up. He read it. He laughed. He goes, where's his cell phone number? Because he knows I give it out on my business card. I mean, we all do. We're in sales, right? And he finds my card. She helps him find it. They call my cell phone. She probably dials it. Gives him the phone. These are the thoughts that go through my head. Again, like the reason why you're really getting that meeting is because you've done something to cause people to kind of stop in their tracks and experience something different than the mediocrity that they typically experience on a daily basis. And because of that, things change for you.
Yeah, it's so cool. So my question is, how do you get an empty donut box?
There's a couple ways. Like we sell playbooks for all this stuff. I'm not trying to advertise myself here, but
I want you to advertise. I think people need to see this stuff. Yeah, please go shamelessly plug it.
You can go to thesalesrebellion.com and you can go to the outbound solutions tab in the top right and click on the Rebel Arcade. And when you're in the arcade, this play is called Carve Out Time, Empty Box. And so when you go to the Empty Box play, you can actually, if you buy it, we provide resources for you to get donut boxes, pizza boxes, Chinese to-go boxes, and then like a version. Some people might have seen this, but we do these Happy Meals. We call it the Unhappy Meal.
Okay.
So we have an actual version though that you can buy yourself. It's a knockoff essentially, but you can change the colors on them. We have all those resources available to people at like the cheapest possible way that they can get them to DIY it themselves. And then if they want us to do it, they can also just reach out, and we have custom solutions, for people that are like, hey, I want to hit my TAM with direct mail. I'm thinking, 500 people in total. I'd like to, build something highly experiential. I'd like to sequence it, right? This is what we do. But if you're just doing it yourself, like we give everybody all the resources to get this done. Otherwise, like, the old school methodology and the way that a lot of reps do it that don't want to spend a couple $100 to have the resources is they'll just go to a Dunkin' Donuts and like buy a dozen donuts, but then ask the person, hey, could I also have a couple of empty boxes? And, sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't. It really just depends on your swag and how well you can get somebody convinced to give you some empty donut boxes. But we usually put like little gift cards inside of them. And man, we just had this work in the real estate industry. It was the first time that we had a realtor do this. He's one of our students. His name's Cedric. He's a badass too. He makes some great content on LinkedIn. He's just a fun dude, and he's got a great story. But he's in the real estate world now, and he was trying to get a listing. And I'm talking residential, right? He's just trying to get a listing. And so he sends this lady to her home an empty donut box, and she called him on his cell phone. So I really do think that this, like, for people that in their mind that might be listening going, oh, I could never do that in my industry, or, oh, what about people that work from home, or whatever the case, like, depending on what you sell and who it is that you're trying to get in front of, I do think that those are factors, but I at the same time, I don't.
It's still a human, right? It's still a human on the other side.
Totally.
It's just humans that we're dealing with, no matter whether it's, multi-million dollar, multi-billion dollar, or, your neighbor down the street. They're all humans, and they all have some sense of emotion that can be tickled through something unique.
Completely agree.
Cool. If someone was starting today and they're like, man, this is super cool. You guys are riffing about really creative ideas here that Dale's come up with. What if they don't have any creativity? What would you say they should start with today?
Yeah.
No software, no excuses, no budget.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the time people say things like, I'm not creative, but I think that's an excuse. I think we all kind of have it in us somewhere, and it's just a sense of wonder that we're trying to tap into. So, think about a movie you watched that caused your imagination to just explode with ideas. Think about an instance, maybe it was a hobby, racing RC cars or paintballing with your friends, but just an instance in a moment where things like felt nostalgic or different in a sense that broke you out of the monotony of life. That's where creativity is born. It's not a crazy place. It's really just the idea of like taking a risk and reaping the reward of that risk. And ultimately, like, that's where, like I said, creativity in lies. And so the thought would be like, if I'm sitting down and I'm let's just say like a super analytical person, and I really have and I'm even hearing what Dale's saying, and I'm going, okay, and I'm still just like, I'm trying to connect, but I'm having a hard time. A super analytical human. I would start like this. I would take a couple bullet points here, and I would start with like, what do I fix? And so if you take Copiers, for instance, like I fix Copiers, right? I fix bad copier experiences. So then I'd have some sub bullets there, and I would put, well, like, be more specific is what would be my next question. So I'd say, well, people have to use their copier on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis. And by the way, if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking copiers in the years 2025, where copiers are selling the most? Cybersecurity, right? Because so much in the cybersecurity space has become this place where people just will hack into your server and take everything, that everything is being printed again. We're going backwards, y'all. Like, legitimately, this is happening.
Back to handwritten letters and copiers and
you're writing handwritten letters and printing stuff with like in highly secure environments that are completely digital in most cases, right? So I digress here, but again, like, the reason I even say that is to think, you got to think deep about what you're fixing and how you're helping people to do things. And this is where it stems from. And so when I subcategorize things, I'm not going to say, oh, well, I help them print from their copier, and I help them scan documents back to their phone or their laptops through a copier. I'm not going to say it like that. I'm going to like literally go through a workflow in my head. Like, what does somebody need a copier for, a printer for? What's the purpose of? So they're in human resources. They're dealing with people all day. They're responsible for X, Y, and Z at the organization. Like, again, I'm going to walk through this thought process of, like, what makes a person's job important and what makes my product important inside of their organization. And once I've written all that down, I'm going to literally just like unhinge myself for a second and say things like, okay, so if a person if their copier breaks and they really need someone to come and fix it, but it takes like 6 to 12 hours for a person to typically show up, just as feedback that I've gotten from people. Like, I've taken all the problems, right? And I say to myself, well, cool. What if I just like took people a baseball bat and I called it like the copier fixer? And I wrote like an instruction manual, like with visuals, like a comic that showed them like how to hit their copy machine with this baseball bat to fix it. And the joke will be understood by everybody because I'm relating, I'm creating
and they all kind of want to do that anyway.
Say it again.
They all kind of want to do that anyway.
I would say that people that even love their copy machine enjoy fantasizing about taking a baseball bat to that thing, especially because of that sick movie Office Space. It like got us all excited about beating copy machines up with baseball bats, right? But yeah, so that it's as simple as that. I know it might not sound that simple, but the more that you work through it in the way that I just laid it out, the more that you'll realize how simple it actually is. And that if you just take people's problems that you help with and ultimately the familiar environments that they suffer through on a daily basis, and you create these moments of release and disconnect from the monotony for them, then your creativity it's fuming, at the mouth at that point, foaming at the mouth at that point, I should say, and really just like creating moments for people that are unforgettable in most cases. Like, who's going to forget that you brought a baseball bat down to beat the heck out of the copy machine with?
Yeah.
And as a joke.
Yeah. Well, I've seen your comic as well with the brick. Is it a foam brick or is it like a mini brick?
Well, it just depends on the day, like in the prospect, right? Because yes, we show people how to make their own through our tutorial or buy foam ones, which I think the foam ones are really cool, honestly. But we also have options there to make a masonry brick, and I can put Lewis's brick on the brick and send it to you. And
that's wild.
Yeah, so we've done it for some of the people that we're trying to help that are copier reps, to sell copiers to somebody. Most recently, we sent one to a guy where it says the guy's name and it says his copier repair brick. And I mean, it's like this big, dude. It's a massive brick. It comes in the mail. It's heavy. He gets it, unpacks it. They get the prospect, our client, they get an email right away. Thank you.
Wild.
That was
That's
hilarious.
wild. Yeah. And then I saw there was the comic. It's how to use this brick. And it's your copier's over here and you're winding up to throw it and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. So if you guys are interested, listening, head over to Sales Rebellion. You said it's in the arcade, right?
Yeah, it's in the arcade. Outbound Solutions and in the arcade.
Yeah, so head over there. You can find the Crumpled letter there. You can find all the other stuff that Dale's got. Really cool stuff. If you're in business, you're a marketer, you're a salesperson. It sounds like I'm saying 3 different people there, but if you're in business, you are all of those things. You are a marketer, you are a salesperson, and there's just interesting solutions out there to break through the noise. We work with a lot of home service companies, right? So junk removal, demolition, plumbing, and they're looking to see how can we get into property managers, things like that. And so as you're thinking, I'm well, for junk removal, there's all the apartments that are, left with stuff in them. There's some, emotion that you can tap into for the property manager and somehow, reach them through that emotion, whether it be through the donut box, whether it be through, maybe they do want to take a baseball bat to it, right? I'm just taking this stuff. And I think it's cool, Dale, that you work in Copiers because it's so out there compared to a lot of the audience is doing. And so they can think, if you can do it for Copiers, we can do it for anything. And there's just something really cool about that. What would you leave someone with if they were still on the fence and they're thinking, why should I do this? Why shouldn't I just keep cold calling? Why should I take the extra time to go do these things? What would you leave someone with?
Yeah, I mean, if you're thinking like that, I tend to say, I can't help you. Because if there's not an inkling of risk in your blood and there's not a desire to create discomfort for yourself in your bones anywhere, at all, period, then I don't think you should do this. I don't, because this stuff takes legends. It takes commitment. It takes people that are willing to build something greater than the person before them and the people that are coming after them and the people that are currently competing against them. It takes a willingness. It takes a desire. It takes a lot is the thought process here. And so I would right away, I would kind of just, when people say things like that or think like that, I would kind of go to say out loud and internally to myself to a degree as well that we're not a good fit. This isn't a good fit for you because, again, this is hard. And the other side of this is that I think a lot of the time we forget that what is easy, ultimately is the status quo. It's mediocre.
Everybody's doing it.
Everybody's doing what's easy. But what is hard is it's unfathomable the kind of results that you'll get with this and where it'll take you. I mean, my life is completely different because I dared mighty things in the way that I was creative in my go-to-market strategy. And yeah, for sure, a guy like me can have the kind of success that I've had, and you can kind of justify it to an extent because you look at Dale, you go, well, you're different, bro. You're built different. You're made different. You're weird as hell. You're a very strange individual, man. It makes sense that you've gotten a little bit further than other people, but I'd caution people thinking that and say to them, no, I'm honestly just a very normal person. I'm a very normal person that wants something better for my life. Yes, for sure, a lot of the things that you see that are wild and wacky are my personality. They're very much Dale Dupree, but they're not far off from who you are too. They really are not, especially the people that are thinking things like, I don't know if I got the time for this. I don't know if I want to commit to something like that. I think that I see a lot of myself in those moments. And what I heard was the same thing that I just said earlier. I heard people say things like, well, then don't do it. Don't do it. Then just stay in your lane and do what makes you comfortable.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, I kind of just remember thinking to myself, I don't like that at all. I don't, when someone's holding you accountable, a lot of the time, for those of us that ultimately have a greater calling, especially on our lives, when someone's holding you accountable, everything changes because you start to think different. You say to yourself, you're right. Why would I stay in this lane? Sarcastically, I know that's how you're presenting this to me, but why would I stay in this lane? Why would I keep doing it like everybody else? Why wouldn't I commit to something more? And I look at it like this, like people will have these 3 layers or sections of their day is how I look at it. One section of your day is it's highly motivational. It's the time when everything is going wrong, but you're in a good mood. You're like, oh man, I can get out of this. I can win this. I can do this. Life's going to be great. I've got this, right? Then there's the middle section of where you're like, okay, I'm working it, but I need a break. I'm a little worn out. And then there's the third section of just I'll just start back tomorrow. I'll hit the hay and get back on this when I feel a little bit better, or when things have cooled down a little bit, or tomorrow. And to me, it's the definition of insanity. It's doing the same thing over and over again. That's how most people's lives are structured, where especially when they get stuck in a loop, where they'll be on a call like this and be highly motivated, telling their story, giving ideas, or listening to a call like this and going, man, Dale is a normal guy. So I can be like Dale. I can go out and be Lewis and be me, and I can have some representation of Dale, but ultimately build my own success and build my own legacy and create my own better outcomes that I desire. And then the middle part of the day happens, and then the end, and a lot of the time too, Lewis, I should just say this, is that the structure I just created, sometimes it's the opposite, right? Where the beginning of the day is you're least motivated. Middle of the day, you're kind of getting there. And then the end of the day, it's let's go. But then eventually you got to hit reset, and it does it again, right? It's a thought process. So usually when I hear that people are reluctant, or they're going to really take in the information and really think about our methodology, and using it inside of their sales teams or for themselves, I just think to myself, just don't do it. Just don't do it, because this takes commitment. This takes excellence. This takes risk. This takes a lot of decision-making that has to be yes all the time. You have to constantly just say yes to things that you wouldn't have said yes to before. And that can be really uncomfortable. And a lot of people just aren't made for it. But if you feel deep down inside that even if you're not made for it, you desire it, I promise you that if you adapt just to one idea that we throw out there, you'll see significant changes in your life.
I couldn't agree. I think there's no better way to end the episode is if you're not ready to be a rebel and take the Men in Black neuralizer and just forget everything you heard about and go on being normal. But if you're ready to step out, as Dale said, go back, find the nugget, go to Sales Rebellion, to the website that Dale has there, look at some of the stuff, go grab I think it's $25. It's crazy value for grabbing the crumpled letter templates. He's got 10 different templates there. You can throw them in ChatGPT and make them your own. He's got the whole thing there in Canva. Go do something. Pick one nugget from what we've done here. Go out, be a hunter. Don't be a gatherer. Don't be normal. And go do something. Dale, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for bringing the heat here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's been a pleasure.
All right, guys. Go out there, be some hunters, and do not sit back and be gatherers. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.